All right, good morning, everyone. All right, welcome everybody to the June CAD Users Group Live event. And thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Mark McLeod. I'm the CAD Services Manager here at ODOT. We are recording this event and it will be made available on our wiki page later today. We do have live chat available, so please type any questions that you might have during the event, and we will field those as the meeting progresses. We will also provide CPDs for today via email, so look for those in the future. Also, if you join the meeting as anonymous, we cannot verify you attended the meeting. And also, if you've joined the meeting as a group, say in an office or a conference room or things like that, each person who would like to have CPDs will still have to join the meeting separately. So we can't account for those individuals. All right, so just a quick rundown of the agenda today. We're going to start off with myself. I'm going to talk a little bit about how our office has been working with Bentley and just a quick ORD transition update and just some general updates for our office. And then we're going to move on to JD. He's going to talk about our ORD upgrade and ORD compatibility, things just to take into consideration for our standards. And then we're going to move on to Matt Ivan. He's going to discuss the CAD standards update and common mistakes with right-of-way on cross-sections. And then we've also slipped in cross-section subgrade for today. That was an update we made, I believe it was yesterday, to the agenda. And then moving on to Eric Thomas, he's going to discuss rollover locks on shoulder templates. And then he's going to show the survey geometry point add-on that he's been working on. And then Brandon Williams is going to do a presentation on our PlanVault Webmap application that we now have live. And we're going to finish it off with just like a short Q&A session. So as I said, just some general updates, some information about how we're working with Bentley, and then just a quick ORD transition update. So just some general updates. All of our staff are still teleworking from home. ODOT still has COVID safety protocols in place for non-fully vaccinated staff. We received an email yesterday where if you're fully vaccinated, then they're just going to have the standard CDC guidelines for fully vaccinated. If you're not vaccinated, then you're still going to have the restrictions in place for masking and social distancing and things like that. We're hoping to have our next CAD users group meeting in September, and we were hoping to have that in person. So we will see how that progresses as far as our COVID restrictions go, but we are planning on having that as an in-person event at the ODOT Central Office in Columbus in September. We don't have an exact date for that yet. We had a standards update rolled out yesterday for our OhioDOT standards. You should have seen that come through. And if you'd like to review the updates, we have a running update doc on our website available to review those updates for our standards. And then I just wanted to mention we have over 1,700 service requests now in our database. We are tracking all of our service requests. And just some quick statistics. Open Roads Designer seems to be the big issue area for individuals. We're at 72% roughly on surface tickets for open roads. And then, some of the other obvious things there project-wise and some of our older standards as well. And then this category just kind of goes into, I guess, a little more in depth on some of our our service requests project-wise at 15%, ORD drawing production 11%, corridors at 8%, drainage utilities at around 6%. So this helps us track all of our SRs to kind of see where our issues areas are, and then we can work with Bentley on some of those defects and enhancement requests. And then we also track our status for all of our service requests. So we have about 95% closed of our service tickets right now, 1.4% open, and we have some awaiting responses. And then we also have a couple of new categories pending development. We decided to put this one in here because it might be something that we have to do on our end to fix it, as far as updating our standards, custom application, whatever. That way we can make sure that those don't fall under the radar. And then we also have a non-response where we responded to the individual and then we just never heard back from them, and the ticket's been out there sitting for a couple of weeks, and then we just close it because there's no communication there for us, so we don't want to keep that ticket live. OTEC has announced that they will be in person this year as well. The dates for that are October 26th and 27th of this year, and it'll be held at the same location, the Greater Columbus Convention Center. So we're looking forward to that, hopefully seeing everybody back there. And we are going to have, I believe, a track, so we're going to do some presentations and things like that there. So looking forward to that. There's also the web link there if you want to go check out any information on OTEC for registration. You can also sign up to be a sponsor with a booth and everything. So a little bit about what we're doing with Bentley. We participate with Bentley on a bi-weekly meeting, and it's basically part of our success planning that they have in place for us. And we meet for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, and we talk about detailed updates according to the service requests that we've submitted to Bentley. And we talk about the defects that we filed and some of our enhancement requests that we filed, and they give us status updates on those. And we prioritize those. We have critical, and then we have high, medium, and then low priority established for all of those. Can't go into any of the details. There's an NDA, so we don't want to go into the full details of all of that, but know that we are working with Bentley Systems on any new developments that are being done for open roads. And these meetings are just part of our EPS agreement or our contract with Bentley Systems. We're also involved with 3 of the innovation councils. JD's involved with the Innovation Council for Drainage. He's also involved with the Innovation Council for Sheet Annotation. And then Matt is involved with the Bentley Innovation Council for Sheet Creation. So they did tell me that Bentley will be combining the sheet annotation and the sheet creation innovation councils together, I guess more along the lines of just sheets in general. So they will be participating in that in the future. But those are some of the things that we're involved with as far as Bentley goes. Open Roads Designer transition. New projects started on or after July 1st, 2020 should be completed in Open Roads Designer with exception of waiver projects. And we have this waiver that we have established where you could work with the district if you have a project within a specific district that you wanted to submit a waiver for, so you could complete that project in the the older GeoPack Select Series products. So if you have a waivered project, then that is established, and you can finish those projects in the older V8i product, I guess. So current project started before July 1st, 2020 should be completed in GeoPack Select Series 4 or 10. That's again the V8i products. We had the waiver process still enabled. It has been closed now. So if you needed a waiver for a specific project, it should have been done by yesterday. And all those waivers should have been submitted through the ODOT project manager for approval through our office. So we can track all of those. That's one of the mechanisms that we use to be able to track all of our older VAI projects that are still in the pipeline. So, and just lastly, I wanted to mention this again. The OhDOT standards are configured for the Bentley Connect products, and they will work with MicroStation PowerDraft, and OpenRoads Designer. Anything on that that Connect platform, they will work with. And I know that was something that was brought to our attention a few times by some consultants that weren't necessarily using OpenRoads Designer, and they were wondering if our standards would still work with some of their other products like MicroStation PowerDraft, for instance, and those should be fully compatible and configurable with that product and those products. So that's all I have this morning. I am going to turn it over to JD now.
All right, share my screen here. So I don't have much to go over either. I did want to make sure everyone knew that ODOT internally has updated its users to ORD 2020 Release 3. That is version 10.9. I know a lot of people have been asking when we were going, timeframes, and some people were waiting on us to upgrade. So just want to put it out there that we have upgraded, but also just to reiterate the same thing we said last time we met, is that we are currently not requiring a certain version of ORD to be used. That means that you can upgrade ahead of us. There's nothing restricting you from doing that, just with the caveat that care needs to be taken whenever that underlining civil schema is changing with the compatibility issues. I'll preface that with we know that this is a complicated situation to deal with, so if every different DOT started mandating different versions of ORD that they can be used on their projects, that could make it even harder on you guys. So we're trying to ease that a little bit by not requiring a certain version. I know some people probably don't like that stance, some people do, but that's kind of where we're at. We're trying to help a little bit in terms of this compatibility problem. So, but all in all, we have upgraded, and long term, the really only real way to fix the compatibility problem is for everyone to upgrade. I mean, that's really the only way to alleviate the problem. So. I wanted to recap compatibility just to make sure that everyone is clear. I still feel like every now and then we get a service request come in when they weren't really sure about it. So when is there a compatibility issue between versions? It is only when the second number of the ORD version changes. So we just upgraded to 10.9. The previous one was 10.8. So going from 10.8 to 10.9, there's a schema change. And so you can kind of see in 10.8, there was 2 releases. So, both of those releases are in the same 10.08. So you're compatible between those two. You don't have to worry about underlying civil schema changes. It's only when you jump between that second version number. All right, so hopefully that is clear. So kind of what does that mean? What can happen if you're going between two different versions of ORD where the schema is changing? Basically, it will upgrade that underlining civil data behind the scenes. So once you open that file and say 10.8, someone that might have 10.7 won't be able to edit that file anymore. It'll say, hey, there's newer data found. You can only open it read only. All right, so that's kind of where the problem lies. If you're dealing with different subs or primes and you guys are on different versions, you might run into that. And that is where you kind of need to take care on your projects. Try to not run into those issues. One thing is don't forget about that sync tool. We do have that version control drop down right here. That will kind of make sure our standards are compatible with the version you set here. So don't forget about that. So we just wanted to make sure everyone knows about that, and they're watching that. If say they're on a newer version on the version control than what they have installed, they might be running into more problems with their standards because the standard's not compatible with what they have installed. So I got a bunch of videos on YouTube on this stuff, or you guys feel free to reach out if you have more questions on that. But hopefully we'll probably touch on compatibility maybe a little bit every meeting, just to any newcomers come in might not know about it. So sorry if I'm boring you guys, but it is important enough to touch on. Last time I did show some videos. I'm not going to show them this time. You can go look up the recording from our last user group meeting, but I do want to mention there is that downgrade civil model that was added as a tech preview in 10.9, which gives you the ability to downgrade files to older civil schemas so they can be used with older versions of ORD. When you get this PowerPoint, we'll post it. These are links to those Bentley videos that go over these different things. But I didn't think it was necessary to show the video again, more so just mention it. And then that is all I have for my part. So we're probably a little ahead of schedule. I believe Matt is up next. Make sure there's no questions coming in. Okay, looks like it was already answered. Just for anyone that might not be looking at the chat, there was a question that came in. Are you still going to live stream the next user group meeting in addition to the in-person event? When we were in person, they were always live streamed as well. But that's not 100% confirmed that we're going to be in person. We're looking to do that. So more info on that to come. But yeah, they were always live streamed before. All right, Matt, are you ready?
Yep. I think I make sure you can see me.
Share your screen. And you want your yeah, here we go. I'll send you your video stream.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
All right, thanks. All right, good morning, everyone. I'm going to start with some updates to our CAD standards, or also known as our workspace. I'm going to highlight some of the workspace standards updates since last October. September was the last time we had a kind of a standards update during this user group meeting, and we talked about some of these. So there's been a lot of changes. I'm only going to highlight those that are more important updates today, but be sure to check out the running update log for a complete list of all the changes over the past few months. And I know that in some other presentations since October or September of last year, we've probably highlighted some of these. So I didn't think it hurt to summarize some of these again. As JD just mentioned, maybe he didn't mention, but yesterday we did push a update, and it is compatible with the ORD 2020 release 3, and we have, or he has added an option for the version control to the sync tool. So you'll need to change that version control to be sure that you get some of those new files that are branded with the 2020 release 3 or the 10.09 version. Okay, so what I did is I sort of broke this up into some of the bigger chunks. So the first few slides are talking about some of the DGN library updates, and I'll start with the feature definitions, DGN Lib. We added feature definitions for split profile grades. We talked about that, I think, in the March user group meeting. So if you want to review that, you can. There were feature definitions for soil borings, for example, target, historic were added. We added a graphic grade profile feature definition, and I don't exactly remember what the median ditch was. It was related to annotation, but also added features for top and bottom pavement meshes so that they can be shown on the cross sections. And then also added some new existing asphalt and concrete pavement removed feature definitions. So you can assign those for different areas where you have pavement removal on your project. JD is working on some special benching stuff, so I know everyone's getting really excited about that coming up. There is a plug. I'll throw in a plug for the webinar coming up at the end of this month. So look for that, some direction coming there soon. And I'm going to talk about this more later today. We've added some subgrade and finish grade seating components to sort of match the workflows that were done with the GeoPack criteria file. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Some annotation definitions were added to the feature definitions DGN library. So we added alignment annotations to separate the different levels. So for example, we separated the stations, the bearings, distances, cardinal points, etc., all onto separate levels so you can turn those on or off as you need. We also added proposed strip grade annotations at 25 and 50-foot intervals, so you can change that if you would like. And we corrected some of the cross-section annotation datums. I don't remember, the datum elevations were showing off. I think it was on the 10 scale sheets. They weren't appearing correctly or off to one side or the other. So that was corrected, as well as some median ditch stuff was corrected with point naming and such. And then there is a new annotation groups that were just added recently to force the alignment stations left or right. So a lot of people have asked about that. So similar to the GeoPack workflow, where we could control which side we wanted things to show up on, you can do that now by using a different annotation definition. So I think Eric produced this. There's a video out there on the wiki page that explains how to make those changes if you need them. We also added curve set annotation, so you've probably seen that already, where the spiral curve curve data is all combined together. So for the drainage and utilities DGN library, this file was completely remade. It was a carryover from SS4, so that was remade from the ground up. And JD can probably talk to this better. I know he's gone over it in several other slides or several other presentations, but there is a slight compatibility issue from if you had started your project before January 8th, which is when that new file came out, you'll need to update your work set to keep using the old DGN library. And there is a video link here. So when these slides are available, you can just click on that and review that video. He also added some feature definitions for drainage profile runs and some drainage and sanitary pipe annotations as well. User data extensions for drainage were added, and an Excel file that will help see all the different drainage and utility text favorites was also added. So you can refer to that. There is a ton of text favorites out there. Profile graphical run filters were added, as well as various additions to the water and sanitary feature definitions and catalogs. So again, make sure you look at that running update log to see everything in detail. And the last one for drainage and utilities, the SUDA feature definitions for drainage no longer have pipe sizes defined with the feature definition, but they're now defined in the prototypes that are assigned to those feature definitions. So that should make sense if you've done any drainage and utilities stuff there. Okay, so the last DGen library that I'm going to highlight here is the text and dimension styles. And again, we added the curve set annotation text favorites, modified this was a recent addition, we modified the cross-section slope text favorite or annotation group to from percent to rise to run when the slope exceeds 9.5%. So if it's a 10% slope, will now be annotated as 10:1 instead of 10%. There were new text favorite added for ditch elevations, and this was set to only go to 1 decimal place, and that was sort of to be consistent with the sample plans. With most of the sampled plans only show an elevation to 1 decimal place. And text favorites were added for unformatted station and offset drainage nodes. So if those were placed without using Civil AccuDraw, those text favorites would need to be used. More utility text favorites for different sizes and types of utilities were added, as well as the last change. You may have already noticed this. We changed the dimension color for for the dimension lines and terminators to color 0. I think it was color 9 before, the dark green color, and that's just so that the main reason was so if we do color plotting that those appear black on the page instead of 3 different colors, text, lines, terminators all being different. And then I think this is the last one here. We removed the foot tick mark or suffix and the comma 1,000 separator from the profile and cross-section elevation text favorites. So like cross-section point elevations, vertical curve annotation where we had the PI elevation, the strip grades, all those things for those were just seemed inconsistent. Some places we had a comma in the elevation, but no tick mark. Others we had the little foot tick mark. And again, hopefully that matches the sample plans better than what we had previously. And while I'm mentioning sample plans, we do have plans to update those. We just haven't had the time or availability to do that. So the content of those plans is still applicable. It's just that the appearance may look different fonts, different borders and things. So the sample plans are still a valuable resource, so be sure to look at those. And we're also seeking samples. So if you have a project you want to be possibly included, you can send those to our office, and probably start with Mark if you have something you'd like to submit. Okay, so more updates to cells. JD added some really cool 3D parametric head walls, and he talked about that in a webinar recently as well. There's also a video that talks specifically about the head walls. So we added some culvert sheet interiors so that for some culvert site plan type sheets, so it has the hydraulic and the quantity boxes included. And then the drainage and utilities cell library and specifically was modified to have the working units adjusted to, or the working units were adjusted to match the OhioDOT resolution of 12,000. I think that was a carryover from maybe a Bentley cell library that had a different units of resolution, so that should all match now. There are some new flag labels for like begin and end, suspend, resume project, and those were added, as well as some of them include the federal project number flag as well. And then there were just some various other corrections and additions to the cell libraries. We have some new applications. There was a new geometry points application. Eric's going to talk about that later. I say demo, I'm not sure if he's going to demo it. I probably will. There is another new application that's called Place Agency Cell, and this is going to be used to place your agency logo on sheets that were created with a name boundary. So if you use the OhioDOT Sheets tool, or application when you place it, as long as you have that configuration variable set to your company's logo name, those will be placed in there. But when we create sheets with the name boundary, those are not placed. So that will pretty quickly go in and place the cell for you. You could probably also add the VBA key into that to a batch process if you want to do a lot of files at once. And the last new application is actually one that was ported over from V8i, is the text masking application was ported over to the Connect edition. And this is only going to be available for 2020 release 3. And all three of these have corresponding buttons added to the OhioDOT ribbon or the workflow. And the place agency one was added so that it only appears if you're in a sheet model. So if you're in a drawing model of some sort or a design model, you won't see that that option.
Hey Matt, just one more. I want to add in with that place agency cell. You know, the goal is for me to eventually add that functionality into the Sheet Manager app as well, which would help automate tasks. But haven't gotten around to it, so that's there for now.
Right. Thank you. All right. Okay, so we had some other various applications that had some fixes or updates. I won't read them all off. I will. The only one I'll talk about specifically is the Notes application did not have any updates itself, but all the note files were updated with the various DRRC updates, and I believe Tess also added the 2020 BDM sections 600 and 700. We had some drawing seeds I mentioned earlier about some culvert cells or interior cells. We added, there's 2 culvert DGN libraries for drawing seeds. So those will show up when you create your name boundaries. And then those are the corresponding sample plans that they were intended to match. So one's well, the second one listed there is a full sheet. So if you have a longer culvert, we can try and squeeze that on the sheet. The top one has the hydraulic and the quantity boxes off onto the right column and set up actually nearly identical to a bridge site plan. So they're about the same type of drawing. The bottom 3 bullets there are for plan sheet with a sub summary, and then plan, or not sub summary, subset numbering. So if you have like a right-of-way plan or traffic control plan where you do the subset numbering, those will place those that border in there instead of the other title blocks without the subset. So there's just 3 of those options there. There's some new training guide was added. It was called Learning the OhioDOT CAD Workspace, and then later it was renamed to Learning. It was renamed from Learning the OhioDOT CAD Workspace to OhioDOT CAD Workspace Basics. So you may have seen that and then seen that it changed. So just be aware it's the same guide. There was also, or there is no data set for this at this time. And this is a training class we're giving internally to ODOT users. We have a 2-day introduction to MicroStation, and then on 3rd day is this introduction or this workspace basics, and it kind of goes over a lot of the ODOT apps, the create work set, create design files, a GenSum, those sort of things. So if you're looking for some guidance there, that might be a good guide to look at. There were also various other updates to the drainage and survey training guides as well. Okay, so last slide of my updates or workspace updates. In the March 3rd user group meeting, we had sort of an interactive session, and we had some polls that we asked. So thanks for all those who participated and provided some feedback. We had sort of 3 topics that were discussed: plotting of color utilities. So we went ahead and added the drainage, lighting, and signals to the utilities pen table. So those will now be printed in color. We also changed the bi-level color of all the levels that use color 4, so yellow, to color 20. This is just mostly so those could be seen easier on a white background, like in a sheet model or a PDF. As far as the center line was concerned, we were going to modify the pen tables to change the way line style 7 prints. But instead we decided to change that from line style 7 to a new custom line style named CL. So you'll see that in there in the line style list. And then lastly was the font issue. We proposed changing our standard font from Arial to Calibri and Calibri Light. So we're tentatively planning to do this in conjunction with workspace updates for the ORD 1010 release, whenever that becomes commercially available. So that'll be the 2021 release 1 version. So that's all I have. I don't know if there was any questions that came in. Looks like most of them been answered. One slide I didn't think I was going to have a whole lot of time to go into is if you have some of these feature definitions that we talked about that have been updated, you will need to go into your files. If they've already been used in a DGN file, you will need to go update those from the DGN library. You can do that through the Explorer. You can do that through a key-in. I think the key-in is called Civil DGN Lib, and that'll go out and pull those from the latest workspace. If you have questions on that, you can reach out to us. So I do see one question there. Is there a tool to batch convert DGN from 08 to 09 schema? I don't know that there is. I think just opening those, you could probably run a batch process just to open them. Would probably do it.
There's that civil file manager. I only used it to downgrade though. I'm just wondering if you could use it to upgrade as well. I'd have to look at that. That goes along with my slide on that downgrade civil model. There's also installed with ORD and OBM. They changed the name of it with 10.9. I believe it's called Civil File Manager. It'll be in the install location of ORD. But I've only ever used it to downgrade, so I have to double check, but that might be something that you could use.
Okay, there's another question. Looks like Mark's typing. I'll let him finish this one. Can markup levels from SS4 and SS10 config be added back to the Connect CADD standards? I'll let Mark respond to that. Yep, okay. He says, yes, we can do that.
Yes, things like requests like that, we definitely want to track that with a service request so we can keep that on our radar to do. So yeah, just submit an SR for requests like that.
Okay. I'm going to carry on here. My next section here, common mistakes with right-of-way and cross sections. So we still get a lot of questions about right-of-way and cross sections. Been a few common mistakes, and I'm going to try and point those out here. No demos, just a few slides and some screenshots here to look at. So if I had to guess, but most of you here today are probably not the ones creating a lot of the right-of-way line work. Probably a few of you, maybe you're right-of-way designers, but we may need your help to sort of educate those who are, so that maybe the surveyors or your right-of-way designers in-house that are doing some of these things. They might be internal, or maybe they're even sub-consultants working for you. So if you start to experience some of these things, you know, help pass along the word that there's some workflows that need to be followed for these to appear correctly. So this is obviously the end result we want to see with the right-of-way shown on a cross-section sheet. I wasn't sure how to organize several of these slides, so I have a couple do's and don'ts. We really would like to see this done with civil geometry and using the correct right-of-way feature definition. And then the geometry must have an active profile assigned once you create that. So on the top there, I've shown a screenshot of the geometry tab or ribbon with the horizontal geometry tools, so that could be used to create your civil geometry or your right-of-way lines with civil geometry. At the bottom here, I have don'ts or really kind of avoids. Don't use microstation elements. So that, you know, this screenshot here shows the microstation place line or place arc commands, you know, the placement commands there that are available. And the reason I say that is you're going to have better luck with the civil geometry because you get their feature definition assigned. What's happening a lot of times is here, the second don't would be don't assign an active profile to a microstation element, which does not have a feature definition assigned. So a lot of folks are going in, assigning a profile to that before there's a feature definition, and that causes an issue. So I'll show how to fix that if you run into that case in a bit. So how do you know if it's a microstation element or civil geometry? If you're not real well versed in ORD or microstation in general, you can go in and you can select the element, and you'll see the exact same two lines here shown on my screenshots. The top one, when I select that element, I just get the regular microstation grips or handlebars there that can be edited or used to edit that line. I can also see in the element properties there, the line icon appears to match the icon from the place line, microstation place line command. The bottom element here that I've selected is a civil geometry that is ruled. So when we select that element, you can see the ORD manipulator handles there are in orange, and I can also see the rules that are applied to that element. And then when we look at the properties for that element, we can see that the civil geometry line icon is shown as well. So that one is drawn in green, so it matches the place line command or place civil line command in ORD. So if a microstation element is used, you can do a couple things. So we can set the feature definition first. So that is on the open roads modeling workflow, and you go to the geometry tab, and we have under standards, you can use the set feature definition, and you can set the feature definition for that element. Then we can go in and create a civil rule. So the pull down menu right above that is called design elements, and then we can create a civil rule feature for that microstation element. I put a yellow note down here in the bottom. This workflow has mixed results. So if you're still not having success with this, I would just recreate that element with civil geometry. So what I'm going to call mistake number one here for today is, the right-of-way not being shown on cross sections. And this mostly applies, as I was just mentioning, because microstation elements are being used. And the active profile was assigned before it had a feature definition. So it's not appearing in the cross section. So the solution here is to ensure that your right-of-way elements have feature definition assigned prior to setting the active profile. If they already did, or you already set the profile active, you'll just want to go into your 3D model, delete that 3D profile element, assign the feature definition, and then reassign the active profile. Using civil geometry again with feature definitions from the start will sort of eliminate this kind of problem that you might run into here. Then here's a screenshot. I showed this in a previous demo. This is of a 3D view, and these elements have all been profiled, but you'll see on the top half of the screen here, the intersection, these elements all have active profiles, but there was no feature definition assigned. And the feature definition also controls the line style that's shown in the 3D view. So on the bottom half of this intersection, these all had active profiles with feature definition set, and you'll see that the 3D line style is sort of a wider, fatter line there. So that's a quick way that you can see the difference between the two and make sure you have the correct symbology going on, or feature definitions, I should say. So what I'm calling mistake number two is the right-of-way still not showing up on the cross sections. So the right-of-way flags are annotation that's placed in a drawing model. So I probably wouldn't call this so much of a mistake as more of an assumption. I think everyone sort of has assumed that I go in, I make these changes, I fix the feature definition, I assign the active profile. That when I open my cross section again, my right-of-way flags are going to be shown. It's just not the case because they're actually annotations. So the solution here is you have to go in and remove the drawing model annotations and then re-annotate those models again. So and that will prompt it to read the 3D model again, and any of those features that have profiles will be shown in your cross-section drawing models. So I know I went through that pretty quick. There is an ODOT training guide at section 600, shows right away. I think there's a whole lot more in there than just the cross-section elements, but there is a section in there that's specifically on this. And if you have other questions or problems, feel free to shoot us a service request and we'll help you take a look. But those are the most common things that I've seen, is that the microstation elements versus civil geometry and the profiles being defined correctly. And then lastly is just that simple sort of assumption that they'll automatically be there instead of having to re-annotate things. So I don't see any questions, so I'll just pause for a second, see if anything comes in. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move on. I don't see any questions there. The last thing that, as Mark said, I decided I wanted to add here today was a cross-section subgrade. So I mentioned earlier we added some of the subgrade feature definitions and the seating, finished grade seating feature definition to the standards. So that's kind of why I wanted to go into this to kind of point out what was happening and why we did it. So everyone's probably noticed all of our training guides, videos, other materials do not show the pavement subgrade like we've always done in the past. And we've only been showing the pavement layers to this point. Well, we've received a lot of questions or several questions and comments on the topic. So I thought it was, I think the thought was that since we now have the pavement in the model, we could simply show it in ORD. ORD doesn't require that the subgrade lines need to be there to compute earthwork like GeoPack did. And some of the districts even had preferences to see the top surface anyway. So as far as the logic behind it, I'll just leave it behind that or leave it at that for now. Eric or JD can weigh in if they want, but there's probably some other decisions that were made at some point. So I'll also add to that, depending on the pavement buildup and the scale of the sheets, the pavement buildup can just end up being a black blob on your PDF or on a printed sheet. So it may not be advantageous to show it anyway. So for example, yesterday as I was preparing for this, I printed a 10 scale sheet and a 5 scale sheet. In the 10 scale, you can't really even see the surface or intermediate courses at all. So with that said, there's been no real official change to what should be shown. L&D Volume 3, 1310.2 still says surface, base, and sub-base courses of the proposed pavement are not shown. So indicating that, just our subgrade line is going to be shown. And by the way, I'm not really implying there's going to be any change in L&D either. I just wanted to point out that this is still applicable whether we're in GeoPack or ORD type project. And I'm also not saying this is be all end all. There may be other cases where you need to show things differently. So coordinate that with your project teams or your PMs as needed. So in GeoPack, using the criteria files, our cross sections would look like these. And you can see the pavement buildup and subgrade on the top example. And on the bottom, it's just a subgrade would be shown on our sheets. So it's real simple, just using levels. We can turn those on or off. So when we look at the shoulder stepping and the subgrade, we have this. We have a pavement buildup, we have a subgrade, we have a finished grade line, And then there's also a finished grade seating line that was there, seated line that was there. So you may or may not have ever even noticed this in the past, the finished grade seated line that is. The criteria files sort of just took care of it for you. And if we didn't change that seated line over the pavement step and the pavement builder was turned off, you would just have a short finished grade line that was sort of floating in the middle of the section. So that would have looked odd. So we would just turn that level off when it got to our sheets. So I'm pointing this out with the Geopack example. So if you want to show the ORD, show the subgrade in ORD, you'll need to add these components to your template and sort of duplicate the same type of scenario. So to do this, there were two feature definitions that were added. So there's MDP subgrade and then an MDP finished grade seated. There already was a finished grade feature definition, obviously. So these were actually in the old OhioDOT SS2 workspace, I believe, with Roadway Designer using the modeling. So that was the modeling tool that was ported over from Inroads back maybe 10 or 12 years ago. And then I think they were also available in the SS4 and SS10 modeling in the OhioDOT CAD workspace with the Open Roads technology modeling that was in SS4. For whatever reason, they were removed from ORD. So really just not really new. We're just adding them back in here. So there's probably dozens of ways you could add this to your template or modify the template to add these components. So I have a quick demo here. I'm probably gonna have to pause it just to talk over it a few times. But we're gonna add subgrade to this template that I already have created, and then we're gonna modify the graded shoulder. I'm gonna modify this graded shoulder to add in that seating, finished grade seating component. All right, so let's start this. So here we're going to go in, we're going to look at the dynamic settings here, and under the point names, you'll just see some new point names with the SG prefix. So if you want to add some new points, you can use those point name seeds there. And then we also have a feature definitions under the subgrade folder that correspond to those. And those points are also in the point name list, which I thought just using that dynamic settings was easier to get there. So to look at the new component feature definitions, probably easiest just to create a new component. So I'm going to create a constrained component here, and then I'm going to browse to the subgrade folder, and I'll see my new subgrade feature definition. So we'll give this a name here, for example, like right subgrade lane 1. And what I'm going to do here is add individual component for each kind of group here. And this is because you may have display rules that turn some of these shoulder or the pavement stepping on or off in this example. We'll take a look at, you'll see more here. So I add a new feature definition, just kind of snapping to each one of those points. So those are constrained to the same points. And then lastly, I'm going to add in this last one here for the shoulder step. And you could do the second part of this that goes straight up to the subgrade. A couple different ways you could have it a separate component. I've just kept it the same component there as well. So then what I'm going to do is go in and modify the point properties here. And I just give this a name like right subgrade graded shoulder point, GSH. And I did forget when I was doing this to create or add in the correct feature definition for that point. So you will want to go ahead and make sure you add that in as well. And then next, what I'm going to do is go in and insert a point in the graded shoulder component. And I'm just going to place that anywhere. It doesn't really matter. So the reason I did that is when I turn off or show the constraints here, you'll see that the edge of shoulder and the graded shoulder hinge point are still constrained to each other, or the graded shoulder is still constrained to that edge of pavement. Had you to remove that point, let me just pause that for a second. Had we remove that point, you would have to re-add in the constraints for the graded shoulder or the hinge point. So I feel like adding that point is a reasonable workflow. Again, there's probably a dozen other ways you could do this. So then what I'm doing is I'm going to go in and delete the same point from that graded shoulder component. So now we see that little piece is gone. Now I'm going to go back to my subgrade point here, and I'm going to apply these constraints to it. And I'll pause this here for a second. I set this horizontal constraint to be from the bottom stepping of the pavement step, and I set it to be a value of 0. If you've done any modeling before, you probably want to make that some sort of offset a little bit, 0.01 or 0.001, so that you don't have that vertical face. Many software applications cannot handle that vertical face. You know, when you have two points at the same XY with the different Z values. So by doing that, that was always a little trick you could add in to doing modeling with Roadway Designer or InRoads that could solve that issue there. You probably also run into the same thing if you're doing a retaining wall or anything else with some sort of vertical face like that. That might be a workflow you're going to use. So then on my second constraint, instead of it being a vertical constraint, I'm going to go ahead and change that to a vector offset, and I'll select the edge of pavement and my hinge point there and set my value that to be 0. So that'll always make that point be in line with the graded shoulder, no matter where that hinge point might move to. So then lastly, I take my point and I move it, my graded shoulder point, and I move it back to match my top of my subgrade. And then what I did was deleted that, the original, or excuse me, I didn't delete it. I actually merged the 2 points, so they're now 1. And I just had it remove the inserted point. So then the last thing I'm going to do as far as building or editing the component or components is I'm going to go in and I'm going to go set under grading. I'm going to set my feature definition to this finish grade seating, and I'll give this a name of finish grade seated. And then I'll go ahead and just constrain that to those 2 other points that were there. And I don't really need to do anything else as far as each one of those points are concerned. So here, if we go ahead and just test a couple of these points, you can see that the subgrade and the that new seated component that's in there will be adjusted. If I get the right command there, see that those will be adjusted no matter where those other points or how those other points are changed. Okay, so then in this template, what I have here is these, you've probably seen these in a lot of the ODOT stuff. We have some null points that are floating up above the pavement, and those will turn off the shoulder and the grading completely, or end condition completely, or it might just turn off the pavement stepping at a driveway, for example. So we can turn it off, we can remove the shoulder completely at an intersection, or maybe just the pavement stepping through a driveway, for example. So I'm going to test these control points here, and you'll see when I move this top one, that's for an intersection, it removes the entire shoulder, but my new components are still there. So that's why I said we had to add those individually. And we'll show how to edit that in a second. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to select, turn off my points just to clean that up. And I'm going to select each one of these components I added. I'm going to make them a child of the graded shoulder for the seated component there. And then for that vertical component for the subgrade, we'll also make that a child of the that same graded shoulder. So if that graded shoulder is not constructed, those elements are not constructed. For the shoulder subgrade, then I'll make that a child of the surface course for the shoulder itself. So then if I test these 2 control points, and you'll see as I move that intersection point out, the shoulder end conditions are all completely removed. And if I test the bottom one for the intersection, or excuse me, for the driveway, only the end conditions and that pavement stepping is removed. So hopefully that's clear as mud. It's pretty straightforward. You can do this from the beginning when you set your component up, or you could just come back in and modify those later. Oops. Hang on, let me catch up. Okay, so here's a screenshot of the 3D model where I turned off all the pavement and sub-base layers, and we're only seeing the blue subgrade component, and you can kind of see that vertical face where we come straight up on the the subgrade comes back up to existing, or excuse me, to the finished grade line there. And then I left on the model for this intersection just to show that you could see the difference. I maybe should have shown it zoomed in a little bit better, but hopefully you can see that. So, and then this is what your final cross-section sheet would look like. And you know, one question that's probably going to come up is, how can we remove the slope labels of the pavement? And Eric did a really nice demo actually in the March user group meeting of how to modify the annotation groups so you can customize that for your project or for what you want to see. So I think this should help a lot of folks who really have kind of wanted this, who have asked for this kind of workflow, and you can pretty simply go in and add those into your templates. And another comment I'll make just before I close is that I know it'll probably be a question at some point. So we really haven't gone in and added these subgrade components to those backbone and component templates that are in the OhioDOT ITL file. We can certainly do that, but for the time being, I felt like it might be a lot of conflicts with display rules depending on how complex your templates might get. And a lot of folks have mega templates that can do all kinds of things. So I didn't want to, mess those up, even though they would have to add in the new components. But I felt like it might be better handled, left to the designer that's creating the template to add those in. If we did add them to the backbones, you'll still likely need to edit, this point here to come up with whatever constraints you're going to want to try and use there. So I feel like if we also add that in, that might be something that gets overlooked and might cause some other problems. But in all likelihood, we'll probably add those at some point. It's just a matter of finding the time. So for now, at least that was the thought process of why they're not in there. All right, so that's it for me, and I'll look for any questions. So let's see. So Joe asked, has OhioDOT considered changing the weights of the template elements to help with things not looking like a blob? I don't think that's been considered. I guess we could look at that. I think you're right, in the criteria files for the Geopack criteria files, those were all like a weight of 0. I'm not sure what they are now, 1 or 2. So that could help. Dan asked, are the backbones in the OhioDOT template library going to be updated with the subgrade and finished grade? So I just answered that. So yeah, in all likelihood, we probably will add them, but for now they have not been added. So does earthwork calculation take into account subgrade stabilization? Do we need to make component ourselves for showing it in the cross section? I can't remember. Maybe Eric, can you weigh in on that one? I think stabilization is a square yard quantity, right? So
So it's been a while since I've looked at that. So to tell you the truth, I'd have to go back and review it again.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't remember either. Phil asked, does this interfere with earthwork quantities? No, it's just going to read the bottom mesh anyway. That was something I meant to add in there as a slide. When we computed earthwork with GeoPack, you weren't getting the fill quantity above that pavement stepping anyway. So it was just computing right to that subgrade component. And if you've ever looked at the way ORD computes it, even without that subgrade component in there, it goes to the the furthest step there and it still goes straight up. So you're still not getting that fill quantity that would end up really being required there. I've always kind of looked at it. If you look at the CMS, there's a little bit of an allowance there for per section. I have worked on some projects where we've just manually calced that quantity back in. But for most of the time, I don't think a lot of folks have worried about it. So Bruin says stabilized subgrade should have the exclude from top and bottom mesh box checked, so they are not included with earthwork calcs. I think that's just a comment. But
yeah, I wasn't going to speak and be incorrect, but that's what I was thinking too. I just wanted to verify it before I said something that was incorrect.
Cool.
Probably wouldn't be bad for us to think about doing some earthwork stuff as a topic in a future one of these meetings, because I know we've had a couple things come in, and I had one yesterday that was doing some topsoil removal, and so I'm working with someone on that. So it probably wouldn't be a bad idea for us to consider that for a future topic.
Yeah, I think we have that as one of our webinar topics, but this audience might also be, it might be a good audience as well.
So I just pulled up our backbones, and the ones that have the chemically stabilized, they are already checked on to exclude from top bottom mesh. So
cool.
It's already in there like that. 'Cause I believe that's a square. It's not a volume. It's a square footage or square yards.
Square yards, yeah, correct.
Square yards.
I think there's another component added in there to do that as well, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all I got. So
I think we can move on. Those are good questions. I know I'll be talking a little bit about quantities in the webinar at the end of the month on special benching. So not exactly what those questions were about, but just a little plug that I will go into a little bit of that. All right, so I think now Eric is up. So Eric, if you share your screen, and if you want to share your camera, I can share it.
Sure.
There you go.
All right, great. So good morning, everyone. I've got a couple of topics to present on, and I've got a PowerPoint for one, and the other one will just be more of a demonstration. So I've got the super elevation, looking at our high side of the shoulder and the rollover. That's the first topic. And the second topic is just a microstation add-in to work with some geometry points and survey points together. And I'll explain that when I get to it, and the need for that, what the requests were. So starting with the super elevation topic. So the problem that we've run into, we've had a few users have reported incorrect shoulder slopes on the high side of super elevation. And this only occurs if your super elevation rate, your maximum super elevation rate is between 5% and 6%. I guess it's really a problem too if it's greater than 6%. It's the transition area between 5 and 6. The shoulder slope is technically incorrect if you're going by the book. And it was defined that way a couple of years ago when JD and I first looked at this and talked about it, and it's just the direction we decided to go. So what I want to do was explain to you what we did and how it works, and then what you can do if you want to change it or need to change it. So just to make sure we're all on the same page here, I just thought I would review some of the super elevation requirements for the high side of super uncurbed situation. So figure 301-8. So I'm not talking about this lower left condition. So this is where my shoulder is 3 feet or less, and it's just going to match the pavement slope. In that case, with a 7% max break on the high side of super. So there's no break point introduced in the shoulder like we see on the lower right, where it's 4 foot to 6 foot, and then we introduce this break point. And then the top one here, these two are basically the same. The only difference between these two is it's just a wider shoulder of 8 to 10 feet, and that rounding is 5 feet, where here the rounding is 4 feet. So these two conditions are the same. So we're talking about this slope right here on the high side of super elevation, and how that's defined in the templates. So let's kind of go through some of that stuff. So going back to Power Geopack and the way it was handled there. So here's just a screen capture of an area. This is my shoulder, and I've got just a single slope across here, and then I hit that maximum super elevation rate, and the break is introduced. So I've got this bump here in my model. In order to do this in Geopack, we had to change templates. So we had a template that just did our rollover, and then we would have a separate template that had the shoulder break point, and we would use a parametric constraint to control this, either by tucking that point right up at the edge of pavement and then having our parametric constraint just move it out over a station range. Or another way would be this slope on the front of that break. We could adjust that with a parametric constraint. I know there's some different ways other users have handled this back in Power Geopack, and but that was the way we had it set up. Was you would just change templates at the point where the break was going to be introduced, where you hit 6%, and then you would transition that out or transition the slope, one or the other. So as we move forward into ORD, they made some improvements to our rollover lock functionality, and that allows us to automate this shoulder break transition without the need to change templates, and no need to define any parametric constraints for that, moving that break point out or tapering that slope of that. So that's all good news. But as we looked at it, there was still the potential issue of when this pops in, it could just come in basically out of nowhere, and you could still see a pretty short bump in your model. So what we decided to do, well, I guess part of the problem there is the L&D manual doesn't give us any guidance on how this break is actually constructed. So I'm sure different construction contractors have different ways of handling this. So without any guidance on that, how should we have this transition be defined in our template? So that's what JD and I came up with, the solution that we currently have. So currently it's defined so that break is introduced as a transition, and it's going to start moving that center point up when it hits 5% super. And then when it gets to 6%, that center point will be moved up. So it works well if you're less than 5%, or once you're greater than 6%, it's in place. It's that transition between 5 or 6. So I've had a couple of users with curves where their maximum super elevation was, the example I have, it's 5.1% on one curve and 5.4 on the other. So they contacted us and said, hey, what's up? The shoulder slope's not correct. So this transitioning it between 5 and 6 does result in, by the book, the shoulder break in that range is incorrect. So let's take a little more look at that. So here's a video, and I'll go ahead and play this. So you can see down here in the bottom, I've got a curve to the right, and I'm at the station, I'm 2.82% and 4% on my shoulder. So as I move forward on this, we'll see, that shoulder slope will start to change when I get a breakover greater than 7%. So right now it's be 6.82% break, so I fall within that 7% max. So let's move forward here to the next station at some point. I turned off the narration from the video, so it'll be narrated. Okay, so as we move forward there at the next station, we're at 3.03%, and I can see the shoulder slope has changed, and that's giving my 7% max break on that. So as we continue to move forward, we'll get up to a point where it exceeds, I think I paused where it exceeds 4%. Yeah, here it's 4.06, and I've got a 2.94, giving us our 7% max. So as we keep going forward and I get to my full super of 5.1, so there I'm just before it at 4.9 and a 2.1. So again, there's my 7% max, and that's what we would expect. So here I am at 5.1, and what I would expect to see is a negative 1.9 over here. And instead I'm seeing a 1.2. So that's because we're in this transition area between 5% and 6. And it started to bring that center point up as part of the transition that's defined in our rollovers. So that's what the user ran into and said, hey, this isn't correct. It should be a 7% maximum break. I should have the minus 1.9 here. So that's the problem, and the problem that was encountered. So what I want to do next is take a look at the actual rollover lock definition in the template and the way it's defined. So we go ahead and start this video. So this is one of the OhioDOT backbones, just under our undivided roadways, pavement and shoulder, 301-8E, and then the 2-lane, and this is our asphalt concrete without subgrade stabilization template. So just zooming in on that and taking a look at that shoulder on the right side. So what we want to look at is the asphalt concrete surface course top shoulder break point. And as I probably just explaining this again here, that the slopes are relative to the pavement slope. So we'll edit that point, and I can see it's constrained horizontally from our edge pavement 2 feet, and it's got a minus 4% slope, and then some rollover values. So this is where everything is going to happen for the rollover. So on this dialog, there's a diagram at the top, and it's showing me a reference point, and then a parent point, and then the shoulder point itself, which is our shoulder break point. The reference point is our PGL. So if you have more than one lane of pavement, that reference point would just be the edge of the pavement lane. So then the parent point is the one that's defined by our constraints. So that's our edge of pavement points, the parent point. So those two define the slope, and then the difference to our shoulder point is what's controlled by these ranges in the bottom of the dialog. So starting kind of at the top, going down, so that slope from our reference point to our parent point is defined by this reference slope range. So when it's greater than 6%, we have a high side difference of 0%. So that just means when it's greater than 6%, that slope on our shoulder break will match the pavement slope. And just jumping down to the bottom, it's kind of the same thing in the low side. So it's less than or equal to 4%, and then the low side difference is 0, and that's going to maintain the same slope as our pavement there on the shoulder. So it's these 3 sections in the middle that kind of define those transitions for our breakover and maintaining our 7% maximum break. So looking at the next one down from the top, so if I'm less than or equal to 6 or greater than 5, the slope is going to vary through that range, and we have it set at 6% to -2. So at 6%, it's going to be 6%, and at 5%, it's going to be -2, and that 5% -2 is our 7%. So it's really the 6% where it's not maintaining the 7% break. Let me pause this for just a second. So at 6%, that's going to equal 6, and as this comes down, it'll transition down to meet -2 at 5%. So this is the value that really is the one that you may need to adjust, and I think I'll show you that in the next video. So moving on, if it's less than or equal to 5%, then it would be at -2, so that's our 7% max break, and then transitioning down to 3, it would be our -4, and that gives us a 7% there, and it will vary between there as the reference slope changes. So that's how these are defined and how the ranges are set up for this. And again, that 6% value on the variable slope over here is really the one that is the one that you will need to manipulate. Okay, so I'm just going to okay that and close this. I think in this video, what I do is I grab that point and I test the point by going down the test point controls and test a vertical control and just move it up so we can just see the behavior. And as I get up, I think over here I went to the tools and the dynamic settings and I changed the step value. Our default is 0.1, so I changed it to 0. So as I move that up, it'll move smoothly. It won't be rounding it to the 0.1 increments. So it's a little smoother to look at it. So as I get up and hit that 5%, somewhere in here, then that center point starts to raise up. And when I hit 6%, then that slope will be 6% and they're equal. So that's the current behavior on that. And I think in this video, I probably do one more thing. Let's see what, yeah, just to check it, I'm going to edit the edge of pavement point and change the slope to 5.5%. So it's halfway through that 5 to 6% transition. And when I float my cursor, it'll show me the slope. So I can see there's my 5.5% slope on that lane of pavement, and I can see it's giving me a 2% slope there as it's in the center of that transition up to where that would equal, the 6% at a 6% pavement slope. And again, that's not what we would expect to see there. We'd expect to see a -1.9. Okay, so that's just the overview of that rollover lock and how it's defined. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward to the next video that I've got. I don't think I do anything else here that's really what I do show you. Okay, let's go ahead and let it play. So going back to edit the point, this is the value you want to change. If your super elevation rate is between 5 and 6, if you set that to -1, so 6% would be -1, and then 5%. And you can see as soon as I applied that, that did drop down. So I'm at 5.5, and over here I'm at -1.5. And what am I doing? I'm testing that again. Okay, and the last, I'm testing it. So now with that at -1, you'll see as I move up, it just kind of jumps up suddenly. And so that's what we were trying to avoid, was this sudden jump. So based on your template drop locations, where those fall in your model, you could see a very sudden jump of that if we left it defined this way. So that's why we elected to have it transition over that range instead of just appear out of nowhere like that. Okay, so one more video. I'll go ahead and play this one. So what I'm going to do is just edit the template and then reapply it, and you'll see the cross section will update. So just want to make sure when you do this, if you're going to edit it, so I'm editing the one that's in the OhioDOT group, I think I probably mentioned there, normally you'd put it in your project templates. All right. So just, you want to make sure you get both sides when you're doing this, the left and the right. And I'll just change that to -1 and apply that on the left side. And we'll come over and edit the point on the right and change its rollover value. It was already at -1. And go ahead and save my changes. And then I'll just synchronize my template drop with the library. And once it's synchronized, it should reprocess. And I can see that's already been updated in my cross section. So it's showing the -1.9 that I would expect to see. There's another curve here to the left. And the super elevation rate on that one's 5.4%. So that's up around station 86 or so. So I'm not quite there. So it's there. I'm hitting the full super and I can see 5.4 and -1.6. So that's the proper break on that one. Okay, so that's what you can do to edit that if you need to do that. So I hope all this is clear and it all makes sense, and hope what we did makes sense. And certainly we're open to adjusting that if we need to. If you guys have a better idea how we could handle that or should have handled that, we're definitely open to adjusting that if needed. So if you guys have any questions on any of that, I'll pause here for a minute. I didn't see anything come into the chat. Okay, so the other one I want to touch on is an application that we just published yesterday. JD pushed out a standards update yesterday. And this is just an add-in to work with ORD geometry points and ORD survey points. So this came as just a request talking to some of ODOT's surveyors who were also involved in right-of-way plan production. And there's been internal discussions about points for parcels and points for right-of-way. Some of our survey personnel like the functionality of a survey point, and the survey details dialog, if you're familiar with that, has a lot of nice functions. Geometry points are a separate element type in open roads. They're not the same as a survey point, and you don't have the same functionality between the two of them. So a geometry point, I can place it using civil AccuDraw at a station offset, and geometry points will retain those rules. Survey points don't allow placement with civil AccuDraw and having rules. So there's advantages and disadvantages to each. So some of the survey and right-of-way personnel in their right-of-way file, so I've got a BR file open here, a base map for right-of-way. Some of them have been creating a survey field book in their right-of-way file so they can store survey points. And it's not necessarily what we're recommending, but it's working for them. And then some others are doing a geometry point and using those. So where it kind of runs into problems with these being two separate types of points, some common things you might want to do, like getting an inverse between the points, or station and offset values of points, or just some reporting is a bit cumbersome. A lot of the reporting in open roads is dependent on using selection sets or point and click to select the points. So there is an inverse command. If I go to the home button here under civil analysis, there's a analyze between points. There's an inverse points command here, and it's based on point and click to select these, which can be pretty cumbersome. So talking with some surveyors, we decided to give them a little bit of assistance here. So I'm changing to my ODOT workflow, and under the apps tab in the survey group, some of this has been just a little bit reorganized here. There was the ODOT monument report. So what we did was just combine these two into one drop down. So this didn't just get wider with another button. So under reports, there's a new one for the OhioDOT geometry points. So I'll go ahead and open this up. Now, this is only going to work in release 3. If you're running release 2, you'll probably get an error or something when it loads, because behind the scenes they changed some of the functions. So this was compiled with release 3, so you need to be in release 3. Okay, so right off the bat, I've got a list of all the points that it's found, and it's reading the active file, and it's also reading any references. And it's going to tell me here the design file that the points came from. So you can see some of these are in my BR002, which is my current file, and some of them are in my survey field book. And it's telling me the point type, whether it's a geometry point or survey point. So I've got the point name, its feature definition, if there was a description assigned, and then it's northing, easting, and elevation. So again, it's reading the active file, reading any references. Now, in this release, I have a refresh data button on here. So if I were to store a new point, it doesn't know about that point. I have to tell it to go out and reread the file. Or if I delete a point in this file, it doesn't know it's been deleted. So that's what that refresh button does. I'm hoping in a future update to have the application kind of monitor the file, and as elements are added or deleted, then check that. Is it a survey point or cargo point? Then just add it to the list. But right now you need to do refresh data. As far as the features that they're showing here, these are for geometry points, it's just any geometry point. For survey points, it's a filtered list. So it's only the various control features or monument features, and that's kind of hard-coded by the app itself. If you want to see all the survey points, there's a button here, show all survey points, and that'll just read everything that's in the survey. So you may not want all the topographical type points, so you can turn those on or off. So as far as what this does, so if I pick this point and pick the window button, it's going to window in on that for me. So I've got this iron pin set here, and I've got some survey points. Again, these are referenced. So if I let's move that out of the way. So if I window on that, it's going to go find that from the reference and zoom in on that. So that's the window function, and it's just going to function on one point. If you select more than one, it's not going to fit those both in the view. So we just wanted to give a couple of common functions that were requested. I want to state that the intent here is not to reproduce Geopack Kogo, okay? The intent is just to give a couple of tools that will help with some functions some people were found a bit cumbersome, as I said earlier. So being able to just pick a point and zoom in on it, window in on it is something that's pretty useful. An inverse function, so if I pick 2 points in the list, an inverse, it's just going to give me a report of the 2 points and the distance and direction between them. The readout here, as far as number of decimal places and the format, it's just coming from your design file settings or the geometry, the civil settings in your user preferences. So that's where you would adjust that as whatever your design file settings are. I can inverse between multiple points. Just select them all, and it's going to show me them in the order they were selected. So if I want to go from this IPS4 to this iron pin to this hub, I'm doing a control click, and it's going to report that in the order they were clicked. So I went 4 to 501, and then 501 to SV54. So you can do multiple points that way. There's a northing, easting elevation report. Now there's easy ways to get this in OpenRoads itself, but just for convenience, I stuck this on here. So if I select a group of points and pick that, it's going to ask me to save this just a CSV file. I can put that wherever I want to put that and give it a name, just whatever. And it's just a CSV file with the point name, northing, easting, elevation, and feature definition. So the intent there is just something that's easy to import into a data collector. If I'm in ProjectWise, it's going to bring up the ProjectWise file save dialog. So this will work fine in ProjectWise. Then the other thing that they wanted was just an easy way to get stations and offsets without, again, pointing and clicking on graphics. So if I just pick an alignment, and it's done the same thing, it scanned the active file, looking for alignments, and scanned anything from references to find alignments here. So there's a lot of right-of-way lines in this particular file, and some easement lines and stuff that are all geometry alignments. So those are all showing up. But if I pick one of these and then just pick a point, and I can just get a quick station and offset from that, or again, a series of points, it'll give me stations and offsets for all those points. And one other thing I'll point out is if you have a point that's outside the limits of your alignment, it will work with that. So I'm going to come up to geometry and store a point. There it is. And just using the calculated point feature definition, and I'll just put it outside the limits of my alignment somewhere. So that was named calc point 1 or something like that. I do have to refresh the data in order for it to find that. So there's that point. If I get a station and offset from that, it will show me that this is on an extension of the alignment itself. So it will give you a note there, it's extended. And it's just extending that as a tangent out, and then whatever that offset is. So that's available now. It's in the update JD pushed out yesterday. And I'll reiterate, this is not intended to evolve into a pseudo geopack COGO. It's just intended to give some basic functions that some of our survey right-of-way personnel were finding to be a bit cumbersome. I am open to suggestions or open to requests for some minor enhancements to this, but we have talked with Bentley about points in the past and the need for additional point tools, so they are aware of that. I don't know any time frames on when Bentley might implement something, or even what they might be considering implementing, but know that we have talked to Bentley about the needs for these types of tools. One thing I could see, this is read only on these points. You cannot, there's no functions to come in and like change the point name or description. I could see a case for enabling adding a description to a point here, but it's easy enough just to window. Well, this one's in the active file, so it's easy enough to window in on that, select it, and then over here I can just add a description. So I probably will not enable anything to write any data to these points. At least that's not the plan. So that's, like I said, available now, and I'll leave it at that. And if you guys do have any suggestions for this, we're definitely open to entertaining any suggestions. You can just use the support request form to send that in. So Mark, JD, that's all I've got. If you guys are ready to move to the next topic.
Sure, sounds good. Doesn't look like there's any questions coming in, so we can move on to Brandon.
Good.
All right, can you hear me okay and see my screen?
I can, yep.
Put
All
Brandon's
right.
video up.
What's that again?
I said, let's put Brandon's video up, not mine.
No, I look like Eric too.
Yeah.
All right, well, my name is Brandon. I'm going to go over the Webmap application, in other words, our plan vault, and a little bit of the ORO as well. But before we actually get to the Webmap, I want to kind of go over an overview of where we started, where we're at now, and what is currently available for externals and internals to view construction plans. So getting started, we had something called the Plan Index Viewer. All district offices had some type of archive for highway plans. Most districts use the Planned Index Viewer, which is a home built app in the 90s that allowed the districts to easily search for their construction plans. Before the Planned Index Viewer, highway plans were Mylar, vellum, and paper. So the district started to scan in all physical copies into a TIFF file format. And that was per sheet. So a folder structure for a plan could, have hundreds, even thousands. We actually found some plans that had thousands of sheets tied to it. So the Planned Index Viewer was an easy way for districts to search for those construction plans. Contracts had digital paper, which only goes back to the late 90s. I think 98 there were a few projects in there, but I don't think it really started taking off till about 2004. So our office wanted to get everything from contracts, is actually how we started, and then we wanted to go and locate everything from the district offices and get all the legacy data that was before the 90s. So this is the view of our internal application, how most districts actually use to search for their construction plans. So this is an actual image of that Planned Index Viewer. I don't think it was last updated since 2000, so 21 years ago. So it is depreciating pretty quickly. That's why we took the initiative to create something that was more centralized for our districts to internally find construction plans. And I want to kind of go over our actual archive process internally and where we got to where we are today. So the first thing that we wanted to do was create a folder structure in our central office as a staging area. So each district had, their own standards on how they wanted to archive their data. We kind of wanted to copy that over to a centralized location and go through it. We wanted to validate the data. We wanted to validate that everything was where it was supposed to. We wanted to rename the TIFF images so you can easily view those pages through bookmark. We wanted to look for missing sheets. We've opened the title page quite often, found that some of the sheets in the plan set was actually missing. So we wanted to mark those and make sure we find those missing sheets if we can. And once we get all the staging area set up, we wanted to convert all those TIFF images into a multi-page PDF. That way it's easier to view, and also you have that bookmark capability to easily go to the right-of-way section or geotechnical section. Once we get everything converted to a multi-page PDF, we import the PDFs into ProjectWise in our OhioDOT archive data source with project properties. So we have essentially a database inside ProjectWise that kind of saves all that data. But we also, more importantly, create a document GUID or GUID to that PDF. So that's a special place and where we keep all the construction plans with the document GUID tied to the plans. It doesn't matter if we rename the PDFs or if we move the PDFs within our data source, it's always going to locate that PDF directly. So here's kind of an image of our folder structure, or in other words, our staging area that we made in central office. We first started at CO, which is where our contracts was, which again was late 90s to current is all those construction plans. And then we made a special place for all the districts so we can go through their legacy data and also get those imported. Once you dig deep into the district, we have the county route section, PID and project number. If a construction plan had a PID, we prioritized that. If it did not have a PID, we went to project number. And then if it didn't have either, which you'll be surprised, actually you probably wouldn't be surprised at how many don't have a PID and project number, we had to do county route section to make it a unique naming convention. And then once you're in there, we sorted it by years. Here's kind of the renaming process that we did. This is a good scenario, I should say. It wasn't always this good. But this is kind of what it looked like in one of the districts. They had their sheets 1 through 18, and then they separated their soils. We went through and renamed it after. This one was a PID, so we renamed it after the PID. You can also see that we suffixed RW for right-of-way. Before they didn't have that, so these are actually right-of-way sheets, but you can't tell by just looking at it. So we did go through and suffix right-of-way, and we added geo in replace of soil for geotechnical sheets. And then you can kind of see that multi-page PDF that was created through all these TIFF images. So once we did all the cleanup for central office, which is where we started, and then we do have a majority of our districts in there. We're still currently working on the plan vault. We I would say have almost half the districts done for all the legacy data. We import everything into a database that our application that is replacing the plan index viewer, which we call the plan vault, which is there's an image right here for that. This is the replacement for that depreciating plan index viewer. So this is an easy way for us to centralize all the construction plans for all the districts to view, which I'll give a little demo about this. Currently, I think the oldest plan in there is 1911, and then we have stuff in there from this year in 2021. But again, we are still onboarding some plan sets from other districts to add in there. I actually think one of the districts we're working on has something older than 1911. I believe it was 1907 or so. But I'm still looking for that pot of gold in the late 1800s to see if we have any construction plans for there. Before I do give the demo for the internal plan vault application, I kind of wanted to give you a view of what the plans look like inside project-wise. So again, once we get those PDFs converted, or those TIFF images converted to a multi-page PDF, we do add it into our OhioDOT archive data source and project-wise. And then we sort them out by district. So you can see these are the plans associated with the metadata to that plan. And each plan has its own unique GUID. So when you look at the plan vault and try to search for those plans, it's going to come and grab that specific plan associated with that metadata. I'd also like to point out, right, the ORO stuff is also in the OhioDOT archive. So here's a quick little video or demonstration. There's our splash screen in one of our districts. So that's the old way of filing plans, paper and Mylar, all right there, all nicely organized, as you can see. And this is the plan vault application. So you can actually sort by district. So I, in this scenario, do all districts. So this is everything that we have, which is, I believe, over 50,000 rows of data. And there's quite a bit of columns up there, and there's actually a filtering option so you can narrow down more of what you're looking for. So if I'm looking for a plan that was on Route 62 with an SLM that was greater than 4 and less than 10, it's going to go through that data and sort that. So you can kind of see how it's dynamically changing as I add those filters in. So once we narrow it down to something that we're looking for, you can see that there's only 3 plans, and you can sort by clicking on the columns themselves. But to get the plan, all you have to do is double click on that row, and it's going to go into ProjectWise and get that plan with that document GUID. You can also see that this does have right away. You could have seen that from the index or the sheets. But you can also see it in the bookmarks on the left after our naming convention has taken place. We do store everything locally, so that's what that button is, to kind of show you that we are just putting in a temp folder since it does copy it out from ProjectWise, and we made it an easy way for our internals to easily purge that those local copies to clear some C drive up, and also to clear the filters itself. Sorry for my jumping there. I feel like I just got off a roller coaster after watching that. So after we've done all the cleanup for our construction plans, imported them into a database that our plan vault application looks like, we decided that we wanted to take it a step further and make it a web-based plan vault for externals to use as well. So not only can internals use this as well, but externals can have access. They actually do currently have access to the plan vault. So before, this might look familiar, we've actually done presentation on what we wanted to do with the plan vault web map before. But again, I want to say it again that this is available now, and externals can or do have access to seeing this web-based application. So just a reminder, if you want to go and actually take a look at this web-based application, for one, we can probably make an announcement in the chat here, but it is also available on our CAD web page. So on the left side, you'll see a CAD plan vault that's going to take you directly to there. And what the web-based application is excels in is the geospatial searching. So before in our plan vault, you saw me searching off metadata itself. With a web application, we can easily query what we're looking for geospatially. So we can go to our house, next to that state route, select that, which I'll show here in a bit, and return those plans as simple as that. And this is using our web service gateway to pull those plans from ProjectWise. So again, it's doing something similar to our desktop application. It is taking the PDF from our OhioDOT archive data source, except this time it's loading it to a web browser instead. And I've forgot that I made a video, so I'll actually just go ahead and let that video play here. This video is going to go over how to use the CAD Plan Vault. The CAD Plan Vault is a web-based application that's available to internal and external users of ODOT. And it's a quick and easy way for you to find construction plans that ODOT has been worked on in the past. So getting started, an easy way to find a construction plan is in the top left. You can actually search. If you knew the PID or county route section, you can go ahead and type that in, and you can see how it separates it by lines and points. That's one way of doing it. You can also click on the drop down and narrow down your search. You can also do city searches as well. However, this is a web-based web map, so it does excel in looking for construction plans in a GIS perspective. So I can zoom in on a route and take a look at some of the construction plans that were done in the past. So here you can see that the yellow lines are forming and there's also orange dots. If we go over to our top right, our first one here, it's actually the legend. So you can see that the orange dots, of course, are points, which can represent bridges, culverts, things like that. And then you have lines, which could be a linear feature such as roadway work or anything in that matter. So if I zoom in, let's say, I'm coming in here to 70, right in between, I think this is 256, you can click on a linear feature or even a dot, for example, and you can see that where I selected, there's one of 26. Okay, so there's 26 intersecting linear features or dots and where I clicked. And I can actually navigate this by clicking the next arrow, and I can take a look at the metadata associated with each of those plans. So I can scroll down, take a look at the route number, project description, and if you found the plan that you're looking for example, this one was plan date was 2016 and the construction date was 2018, and this let's say this is the safety traffic control that you're looking for, you can click Get Plan, and what this is going to do is go into the OhioDOT archive data source and project-wise and
Hey,
get the
Brandon, I'm not.
document
It looks like your video
associated
might have
with this
paused
metadata.
here because I'm not
It's
seeing
going
anything.
to download it to the web browser for you to view it. Is that the case for everybody else? Can you still see my screen itself?
Yeah, I can see it, but it looks like it's lagging.
Is there audio or is it just the display is lagging?
Well, the audio is fine, it seems like, but the display is lagging, it looks like.
It was pretty much frozen for me, the video, but the audio was coming through.
All right, let me know if can you see it now? I'll back it up here for a sec. Traffic control that you're looking for, you can click Get Plan, and what this is going to do is go into the OhioDOT archive data source and project-wise and get the document associated with. Can you actually see it moving now, or is it just sound still?
It's still sound.
Yeah, just sound.
It's white. You got the video somewhere? I can play it off my screen, maybe.
Yeah, let me see. I can just go to the video itself and play that. I don't know. It seems like it's doing it for everybody though. Let me go ahead and get to it real quick. Was it frozen since the beginning, or did you guys actually see some of the features, or no?
It worked. It was working for like maybe a minute or so.
Okay. I'll stop sharing the PowerPoint and I will share the video itself. All right, I was just copying a local, speed things up. And we'll go ahead and share the video. Let me know if there's anything different. You can go ahead and interrupt if it's not. But I'll start it somewhat where we left off. This video is
Brandon, I got it up on my screen if you want me to play it.
if I zoom in, let's say, I'm coming in here to 70, right in between think this is 256, you can click on a linear feature or even a dot, for example, and you can see that where I selected, there's one of 26. Okay, so there's 26 intersecting linear features or dots and where I clicked. And I can actually navigate this by clicking the next arrow, and I can take a look at the metadata associated with each of those plans. So I can scroll down, take a look at the route number, project description, and if you found the plan that you're looking for example, this one was plan date was 2016 and the construction date was 2018. And this, let's say this is the
That video looks like it's still paused for me.
You can click Get Plan, and what this is going to do is go into the OhioDOT archive data source and project-wise and get the document associated with this metadata. So it still is paused for everybody.
Yep.
All right, JD, if you want to go ahead and take over and share the video, it should be in the same folder with all the presentations.
This video is going to go over how to use the CADD Plan Vault. The CADD Plan Vault is a web-based application that's available to internal and external users. A construction plan is in the top left. You can actually search if you know the PID or county route section. You can go ahead and type that in, and you can see how it separates it by lines and points. That's one way of doing it. You can also click on the drop down and narrow down your search. You can also do city searches as well. However, this is a web-based web map, so it does excel in looking for construction plans in a GIS perspective. So I can zoom in on a route and take a look at some of the construction plans that were done in the past. So here you can see that the yellow lines are forming, and there's also orange dots. If we go over to our top right, our first one here, it's actually the legend. So you can see that the orange dots, of course, are points, which can represent bridges, culverts, things like that. And then you have lines, which could be a linear feature, such as roadway work or anything in that matter. So if I zoom in, let's say, I'm coming in here to 70, right in between, I think this is 256. You can click on a linear feature or even a dot, for example, and you can see that where I selected, there's one of 26. Okay, so there's 26 intersecting linear features or dots and where I clicked. And I can actually navigate this by clicking the next arrow, and I can take a look at the metadata associated with each of those plans. So I can scroll down, take a look at the route number, project description, and if you found the plan that you're looking for example, this one was plan date was 2016 and the construction date was 2018, and this, let's say this is the safety traffic control that you're looking for, you can click Get Plan, and what this is going to do is go into the OhioDOT archive data source and project-wise and get the document associated with this metadata, and it's going to download it to the web browser for you to view it. So here we can see that we have one of 18 pages. This is the PID number that we're looking at, and you can scroll through the construction plan to view it. So that's one quick and easy way to do that. So we're going to close out of that, and I'm going to zoom out here, and I'm going to go over some of the other features that the Plan Vault has. So starting out, we talked about the legend. There's also a layer list if you wanted to turn off things by layer. For example, I didn't want to see points. I can turn that layer off and back on. There's also city boundaries if you wanted to see that. Currently, you can see district boundaries, and I believe county as well. But we can zoom in here, and you can actually change the base map gallery. So right now we're in streets, but we can turn on imagery or imagery with labels, and you can kind of see a more satellite view of the map itself. But I like to keep it on streets to keep everything running a little faster, because when it comes to imagery, it might be a little slower in that case. But it's really just a preference. There's also a measuring tool. You can measure an area for acreage, or you can also do a distance. For example, this ramp to this ramp, we can say is 0.39 miles. So that's a little added feature you can use if you find that useful. There's also an add data option, so you can add some data. More importantly, add files. So if you have a GeoJSON that you want to see on a map, you can browse to it or click and drag it, I believe, into this, and it will display on the map for you. Now, one of the most important features is this select area. So I demonstrated, clicking a certain feature on the map. You can also do a rectangle, create a rectangle of everything within that area. So, I might not know exactly where it's at, but I can go ahead and do something like this, and it's going to return every linear feature, point feature within that boundary that I just created. And you can see that in the points we have 23, and then we have 53 for lines. And I can actually click the 3 dots here, zoom in, see statistics, but what I want to look at is this view and attribute table. So now I have an attribute table of everything within that boundary that I've created and all the metadata associated with it. So I can come in here and double click on each one of these, and it's going to pan to the metadata itself. So let's say this is the plan that I want. I can go ahead and click Get Plan, and it's going to go into ProjectWise in our archive data source and get that plan and return it in our web browser for us. So now I can take a look at the construction plan. This one doesn't have right away, but we did specifically name our images or our essentially bookmarks or table of contents to have RW suffixed, so you can easily navigate to that without having to read the index of sheets. Sometimes plans can get pretty big, and having the RW on the left side here as a bookmark can make things a lot quicker. But in this case, it does not have right away, so we'll go ahead and close out of that. So I can easily go ahead and clear that and navigate the attribute table still if I wanted to, but for now we're going to go ahead and close that. Another way is that you can actually search by querying. So let's say I'm looking for a bridge or culvert, I can query in points, or if it's a roadway segment, I can go ahead and do a query there. If I know the district, I can add that. If I know more of the county, then I can do that. You can also start typing it in to narrow down that search. So here we're going to go ahead and click on Fairfield County and my route number. So I want to see something on 70. It is a 5-digit code. So you can see an example, 315 would be 00315. So Route 70 would be 3070. So now I can hit apply, and it's going to query everything that I just did. So if I zoom out, you can see kind of the sections there. I can collapse these if I want. A lot of these have SLM points at the end of it, so you can kind of narrow through that, or you can click on the drop down to read the metadata and things such as that matter. So here I can actually click, and it'll also pan me as well. So that's another quick, easy way to find plans. So you can also expand these out again if you'd like. Okay. So last but not least, we have filtering. So you can filter that as well. But my personal preference is either querying, or you can do a rectangular search. So that is an overview of the Web Plan Vault. So if you guys have any questions, you can always submit a form stack request, which I'll link in the description below, if you need any assistance with navigating the CADD Plan Vault web map application.
So one thing Let's make sure I'm unmuted. Yep. One thing I
This
didn't
video
mention that video is at the top there's a CAD services link, and you can click on that. It's going to take you to our webpage. To the right of that, we are also looking to add maybe the form stack. So if you guys find any issues with the plan vault or need any assistance, you can easily get help with that and send us an email. It essentially sends us an email to let us know of the issue or question that you might have. But outside of that, I just wanted to quickly go over ORO because I don't know how we are on time, but I want to get to some questions if you guys have any. And I'm sure if you have other questions with any of the other presentations, we can get to that.
Hey, Brandon, there was a question that
yeah.
came in. It said the get plan function doesn't seem to be working in Internet Explorer. Only works in Edge. Is that correct? Have we seen that?
I don't know if I have. I can test that out. Before we had Chrome, I used it in Chrome a lot. I believe I've also tested it on Firefox on my personal PC. And yeah, Edge is currently what we're using. I don't know if I really tested IE. I personally am not a fan of IE, so I probably didn't test it. But yeah, I'll have to test that out. And if there is an issue, maybe we can get with our tech services team and see if we can get that resolved. Thank you. So our next slide, we're just going to go over ORO, which is similar to our construction plans, except this is specifically right away. These plans are also hosted in our ProjectWise environment and searchable in a web-based app. It looks very similar to what we just showed there with our plan vault. And of course, we deal with state routes, US routes, and interstate routes. So that is what it's going to consist of. But it also has monuments. So the point data on the ORO app is actually monuments, and then the linear features is the right-of-way plans itself. Currently, we're working on importing districts 5, 9, and 12, but the right-of-way does have a lot more districts in our plan vault, since a lot of that cleanup is not present at the time. But we have a few districts until we're finally have all the right-of-way plans imported into ORO. And then on this next slide, it's just I only have a screenshot of the ORO app itself, so you can kind of see how it does have similarities. And you can do some searching in the top left, but it does have different metadata itself, as you can see in that attribute table below. And I believe that's all I had. So if you guys have any questions, we can answer those. I know this is probably a little delayed, so we can give it some time. If not, we can open the floor to other questions about previous presentations.
Thanks, Brandon. Give it a couple seconds here, see if any questions come in.
JD, I got to restart Teams for a second.
Okay. So one of the things that just came in, cross-referencing the ORO and CAD Plan Vault web map, it seems that there are plans that are in ORO that are not in the Plan Vault. It's just because the vault is not complete. Yes, but I'll let Brandon.
Yeah, it's probably because the Plan Vault only, I think Mark mentioned it. I don't know if he published it, but Plan Vault only has District 1, 5, 6, and 7. So those have been gone through. Now, if one of the plans that you're referring to are in one of those districts, then maybe we can cross-reference why it's missing. It's also possible that when we went to the district, the metadata associated to map it was not available in their database. So we do need to know the route, the county, so essentially the county route and section to plot that on a web map. It might have been in their right-of-way data source, but not in their construction data source. So that's a possibility as well. Our main focus right now is just getting the plans in there that are mappable. Once that's done, find the plans that are unmappable to see if we can do that. In some cases, it might not be possible because that route might not exist in the LRS system anymore, or maybe the begin and end points were wrong, or fat fingered mistyped. So that comes with managing a database in the 90s. You have human interaction, adding the data into the database. Sometimes it might not be always 100% accurate. So we're trying to catch those as we import it, but sometimes we might not catch that. So that's a long answer, but yeah.
And to clarify, the districts you mentioned, those were for plans previous to the 90s, or
Yep.
all the
Yep.
central office ones across the state from the 90s to today have been imported. But yeah, that's gonna be a work in progress to get the stuff that's not geospatial added in there, but it's a start. Okay, so I see a comment about projects from City of Worcester.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, the intent right now is, it's to just house ODOT specific projects in the plan vault that we have available in our database, and as of right now.
So that's something we can look at in the future, adding
Yeah.
in, city plans and stuff. I don't know how your
there's
geospatial is working if you have that set up. The filtering capabilities is all based off of the state system. So, but I think that's a great idea for future. So
definitely
we'll keep that in mind. So I think that we'll move on into kind of the Q&A session now, which might be a little hard since we can't just open mics up. But if you guys have questions, you can start typing away, and we'll try to answer them the best we can. While we're waiting for questions to come in, I do want to mention that hopefully a majority of you guys saw email come out this morning, basically inviting you to our webinar at the end of the month on special benching. So if you guys didn't get that, you might want to consider signing up for our mailing list so that you are on that mailing list. You can also get to that from our wiki page. I'll add those links in here.
You going to publish the DRC email sign up? Is that what you're doing, JD?
That and our upcoming events
okay.
page. So if they did not, they can get to the calendar invite for the special benching from that link. And then I'll put in a link to sign up.
While you're doing that, JD, the live feed just sort of finished up. I had it on another computer, so you might have some more questions rolling in. But there is one here. Is there a report or similar tool that will report station and elevation of profiles at regular or irregular intervals? Oh, I read that wrong the first time. There is a report you could do, a horizontal geometry report, and then change the I can't remember the name of the report, but it'll give you a vertical interval depending on what you set in your tool settings. So if you wanted an elevation every 25 feet, you can do that. Sorry, I misread that the first time. It says irregular intervals. I don't know of anything off the top of my head without just using a analyze point function to just select those.
There was a message that was just posted. Will the legacy plans pre-digital paper be available in the GIS application? Yeah, we're slowly bringing in all the districts and onboarding all of their legacy plans, and those will be available. We have, I think it's 4 districts finished, and yeah, Kyle posted it there, D1, 5, 6, and 7, and we're currently working, I believe, on District 8. My question came in. Says there was a discussion last meeting about creating a submission form for requesting plans to be added to the plan vault. Brandon, do you remember that discussion?
If so, it was a while ago. I don't remember doing it in a CAD meeting.
Okay.
I know we've thrown some ideas about you know, how we want to add things to the plan vault now, since we don't have an automated process yet.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe,
I would say that would be probably a future thing that, you know, we could potentially look at doing once we get all the plans, you know, imported from the districts and get the data, I guess, scrubbed a little bit better for the GIS portion. So we're showing, you know, the plans. But yeah, that is a possibility.
I do know, you know, there are some things in 2021 that have been imported, but currently we're still working on legacy data, so we're not prioritizing 2021 plans yet. I don't know, since it's halfway through the year, maybe we'll do it in, you know, now and at the end of the year as well, or we'll wait till the end of the year. I don't know. We can have an internal discussion on what we would like to do for newer plans as we work on the legacy data.
You talking about like the 2021 plans that are being like sold? Yeah, right. Yeah, I think that's going to be, you know, probably a quarterly thing, maybe, you know, every quarter, you know, do the importing. we don't, because we're not going back through the files are typically already PDFs now, so it's just importing them in. So.
Yeah. Yep, I know our future plan is when plans are completed and project-wise, automating the addition to that plan to the plan vault.
Right.
But we haven't really worked on that yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something else that I know the idea has been kicked around and we've had requests is, if you search for a plan, you have the option to download the PDF, but also maybe have the option to download the, like the CAD file itself, like the base map for that particular project, since it's available, once the project's been sold anyways. So, or going to sell. So that's an option as well for future improvements. Looks like there's is there a web page on ODOT's website that lists all the online applications like Plan Vault? I don't believe there is, and I know Kyle looks like you're responding to that right now.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that ODOT's kind of undergoing a website overhaul.
Right.
And it's been a long work in progress. So that's a great suggestion. I think we can do better on our page, at least, of trying to get all those links in one place. But as far as ODOT as a whole, I think that's going to be a work in progress for the future to have all those applications linked on one site.
Looks like the plans he can provide are along state routes. And I'm assuming you're referring to District 3 stuff. We haven't gotten to District 3 when it comes to the construction plans himself. I think as we published, it's 1, 5, 6, and 7 are currently in there. But if you want to volunteer your district to be next, usually the districts just let us know when they want to get things imported, and then we start working on them. And like Mark had mentioned, we are currently working on District 8 now, but I don't think we have any other district lined up yet who's offered their data sources or their plans.
Brandon, I think Andrew was the one that was offering plans from the
City of Worcester.
City of Worcester.
Yeah.
So he's just saying they are along state routes.
Gotcha. Yeah, that'll be something that we'll have to look at later in the phase of the project. Something after ODOT's stuff has been finished and completed. We're going to be focusing most of our efforts on our own plans at this point. I guess one other thing to note too is there's no as-built information in the plan vault at this point, and also design builds are not available in there. So we probably should have mentioned that.
I think we can call it. Looks like the questions have stopped.
Yep, sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending. I will get the PowerPoints and this recording up on our wiki page by the end of the week. And if you guys signed in with a Microsoft account for the CPDs, well, I will try to get those out the next couple of weeks here. So keep in mind that webinar at the end of the month is coming up, and then if you signed up for our emailing list, then you'll get any future updates on events coming up with us. So I will hope to see you guys next time.
Yep, thanks everybody.